So down in Florida, there's this incredible legal battle unfolding that pits a private citizen against a sitting judge. And it's raising these huge questions about power, about privacy, and really about where the line is for people in authority. It all starts in one courtroom, but believe me, the outcome could affect every single one of us.
It all kicked off with this. Just imagine for a second, you're in a courtroom, and you hear a judge say that about someone who isn't even the defendant, not a lawyer, just a private citizen. And get this. This wasn't some quiet aside. This was said from the bench, on the record, during an official court proceeding.
So that's the big question, right? Who is this knucklehead named Rusty? His real name is Rusty Miller. And what could he have possibly done to make a judge single him out like that in open court? Let's walk through exactly what happened, because it's all laid out in the court documents and federal filings.
Okay, let's start with the moment this whole thing just exploded. The confrontation in the courtroom wasn't just a simple insult. Oh no, it escalated into a series of pretty stunning accusations that would eventually become the spark for a full-blown federal lawsuit.
According to the court affidavits, Judge Madrigal didn't just stop at calling Miller a name. He allegedly held up a document and started reading off a list of prior criminal charges, essentially broadcasting Miller's past to the entire courtroom. And here's the really crucial part. Miller wasn't on trial, he wasn't a witness, he wasn't even a party to the case. He was, legally speaking, a nobody in that room.
And this is where things get really sticky from a legal standpoint. A lot of those records the judge was allegedly reading from were sealed. Now, a sealed record is, by law, private. Florida law is super clear that it's illegal to publicly disclose this stuff. So the big question is, how did a judge get access to it, and why on earth would he read it out loud in court?
To really get what's going on here, we have to rewind a bit and look at the actual case the judge was supposed to be presiding over. This whole thing didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was all rooted in the criminal trial of a woman named Kelly Lynch.
So this is the court order for Kelly Lynch. She was the defendant, and she was facing some very serious charges. Rusty Miller's only connection to any of this was that he was a friend. He was helping her out, financing her legal defense, and trying to communicate with her lawyer.
You can see from these text messages, which were actually filed in court, that Miller is basically acting as the go-between for Lynch and her attorney, Jonathan Mills. He's asking for updates, he's trying to set up meetings, he's raising concerns. The records show this pattern of the lawyer being unresponsive, which was frustrating both Lynch and Miller. That frustration led them to file motions directly with the court, and it seems like it was that advocacy that got the judge's attention.
So what does Miller do in response to being called out and having his record read in court? He files a federal lawsuit, and his complaint makes a huge argument that the judge didn't just act unethically, he allegedly crossed a bright constitutional line, violating some of the most fundamental rights we have in American law.
The entire lawsuit really stands on three massive pillars of the Constitution: the First, the Fourth, and the 14th Amendments. It's claiming the judge's actions weren't just personal attacks, but were direct violations of Miller's protected rights: his right to speak, his right to privacy, and his right to be treated fairly by the government.
Okay, let's break this down. The lawsuit alleges a First Amendment violation by basically retaliating against Miller for helping his friend Lynch. Then, a Fourth Amendment violation for what it calls an unauthorized search of sealed government databases. And finally, a 14th Amendment violation for publicly shaming him and wrecking his reputation without any warning or chance to defend himself, which is, the very heart of what due process is supposed to be.
I mean, as the lawsuit itself puts it, this is just an extraordinary situation. It's alleging that a judge completely stepped outside his role as a neutral referee and took extrajudicial actions that are outside the law, against a regular citizen who had absolutely nothing to do with the case in front of him.
Now, you might be thinking, just sue the judge. Well, it's not that simple. Suing a judge is incredibly difficult. There's this powerful legal shield designed to protect them called judicial immunity. And you have to understand this concept to really get what a monumental challenge this lawsuit is facing.
So, what is judicial immunity? Basically, it means a judge can't be sued for the actions they take as part of their official job, like making a ruling in a case. The whole point is to make sure judges can make tough calls without being afraid they'll get personally targeted with a lawsuit. But the key phrase here is judicial decisions.
And that distinction is exactly what Miller's entire lawsuit is banking on. His lawyers argue that, sure, ruling on a case is a judicial act and it's protected, but, they claim, conducting a private investigation into a non-party, secretly accessing their sealed records, and then publicly shaming that person, those are not judicial acts. And for those, a judge can be held accountable.
So, look, you might be hearing this and thinking, wow, that's a wild story from Florida, but what does it actually have to do with me? Well, the principles at the heart of this case, they have massive implications for the rights of every single citizen.
Because, it's one thing to hear this and just feel that a judge's behavior is way out of line. It's a whole other thing to understand what's legally at stake here. The outcome of this case could literally redefine the boundaries of judicial power and our own individual privacy.
This case really gets to the heart of some huge questions. First, privacy. If a judge can just pull up and weaponize your sealed records, is anything truly private anymore? Then, accountability. Our Constitution gives judges power, but not absolute power. So who holds them accountable when they cross that line? And finally, free speech. Can you be targeted by the government just for helping a friend deal with their legal case?
When you boil it all down, this is the argument. The entire case comes down to this one simple but really profound idea. A judge is supposed to be a neutral referee. An investigator's job is to pick a side and gather evidence. The lawsuit says that when a judge decides to put on an investigator's hat, they have to take off the judge's robe of immunity.
And so all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. Our whole legal system is built on checks and balances to stop the abuse of power. But what happens when the very person who's meant to uphold the law is the one accused of breaking it? This case in Florida is going to put that very system to the test, and you can be sure the answer is going to echo far beyond the walls of that one courtroom.